So Pastor Doug asked me to come today to do a testimonial, which I very much welcomed, and the thought being to share how the kingdom of God has impacted my life, and I guess more specifically how New Perspective Community through the kingdom of God has impacted my life. There's too many ways to mention in the time we have here today, but there are a few that really do come to mind that I wanted to share for sure. The first was in the name New Perspective Community, it was the sense of community. Before we moved here, for those of you that know my family and our story, we felt we didn't have that sense of community, and we prayed for it. And it was a prayer answered when we came here for sure. When we arrived, I can still in my mind remember the first day that we arrived at the church, and all I can liken it to, I was trying to compare what that was like. And if you've ever been part of a big family and you've gone and more people than that need to come and meet you at the airport arrive at the airport just to see you, that's what that was like. And it was incredible because there were people that I didn't even know and they were already waiting to receive us. And it was amazing. And it was real, and it was a prayer answered for sure. Eileen and I prayed so hard for our children to have that community, not just for our kids, but for us as well. And the level of acceptance and inclusion is so incredible at New Perspective Community, and that definitely was a prayer answered. The second one, after being part of the church, I started really reflecting upon our name, New Perspective Community. And it is a new perspective. It's a new way of seeing. It's a new way of understanding. But I thought about it, and it's more than that, because it's a new way of seeing that leads to a desire for a new way to engage with God, with the community, with each other. And it really started making me think about my level of engagement and what I was doing, whether that be tithing, spending time at church, working in the community, having a new perspective on how God works through us, with us. It's absolutely wonderful, and it's really inspired me to rethink not only how I understand God's influence in my life, but how I see God's working going around us, and what it inspires me to want to do, a new level of engagement. The absolute largest, I think, impact, if I were to quantify it into something, was the discipleship that I took with Pastor Doug while being with New Perspective Community. And discipleship just being the process of becoming who Jesus would be if he were you. That's huge, right? And it's exactly that. And it was this process of learning about why we are the way we are, who we are, what our gifts were, and sharing that time with Pastor Doug and the others in the discipleship. Pastor Doug shared with us that he sees his purpose in life as being one to help others walk more closely with God, to understand their walk with the Lord. And I was all over that. Because when I started coming, I really felt, almost like no exaggeration here, when Pastor Doug announced he was going to do this discipleship again, it was almost as though, God pointed on my forehead saying, this is for you. And I remember going to him and saying, I knew I wanted to do it, but for some reason, I guess I was a little shy or timid, I don't know. And he just said, I'll pray for you. And when I came back, and I said, okay, I'd like to do it. He said, we already have 5, but we are going to make it 6. And I remember thinking how amazing that was. I felt as though the group had made an exception for me, and I'm so glad they did. And just as a side note, it was so funny having moved from Toronto, and Toronto being known, a colloquialism, as the 6. I thought, how fitting, that I come here and this group for the first time is called the 6. Just as a side note, I thought, how amazing is that little thing there. But through the discipleship, I really learned a lot about calling and communion, to stop telling God what I wanted to do and then asking him to bless it, rather asking God, what do you want me to do? What do I need to do? Where can I help? And I think that's probably the biggest impact for me is that I stopped asking what God could do for me. And I started asking God, what can I do for you? Right? What can a guy who's so blessed do for you? Which at first seems crazy, right? God needing us to do things. But I've learned that God calls on us. He blesses us with gifts and abilities. And like I say to my children, the first part of your life is to figure out what your gifts from God are, and the rest of your life is to just give that away, to just share that with the world. And I've really embraced the idea of calling and purpose and community ever since being part of New Perspective community. It's really taught me to reframe what it is I'm doing here and what my calling is. And all of the communion, everyone that attends New Perspective community shares that same sentiment, I think, with each other. It's a wonderful community, and it's impacted me and my family greatly. I feel like it's so many blessings answered, or so many prayers answered, and I can't thank New Perspective community enough.